Hello, everyone. Some of you don't know me. My name is Wonsuck Kim, University of Texas, Austin. I'm here to speak about some exciting initiative about the experimental data management. I'm very excited. I'm not talking about my research outcome today. I'm talking about this initiative on behalf of the leading groups, including Leslie Shi. She's over there. She's a geoscientist and expert on data management. And Brandon McLoy and Raleigh Martin just finished his thesis. So I need to call him Dr. Martin, I guess. This is one of the delta experiments newly constructed in UT Austin. You can see the delta here is projected out over inside the delta. It actually provides a lot of data. And it might be very useful. So I want to convince you to use some of the existing experimental data. First of all, I want to start with my favorite images here. What is your favorites? Landscapes. Probably you are working on erosional landscape, depositional landscape, deep sea, and rivers and deltas, and so on. And some in different the ways we are using and different levels of involving in a landscape, but we are all trying to understand what's happening and what is the mechanism beyond this patterns. I'm going to bring some examples of experiments. There captures some of the earthly patterns and planetary surface patterns. And those are data. Just I want to upfront say that the examples I brought is very biased towards what I'm familiar with because I can represent. But I want to note that there are more exciting experiments out of this slide. First, this experiments done in San Antonio Falls Laboratory, Tech experiments, 2005, this one, and 2006. They examined the tectonic influence on the fluvial patterns. This is an example of small-scale relay ramp. You can see the two normal faults. This is an aerial photo from Death Valley, I think, or Rio Grande. It has a beautiful fences coming out from the footwall or hanging walls. This experiments actually mimic the two set of the normal faults and show how they steer the channels. And this one also shows how the axial channels steered by the mass is coming out from the footwall side and hanging wall side. The size of the basin is around 5 meter long and 3 meter wide, and they actually deliver a very high resolution topographic data and also slice sections to see the stratigraphy. Fluvial river-dominated delta is not the limited for the experiments anymore. As you see, this is the Mississippi River delta, barefoot. Axons, cohesive material actually mimic or nicely capture the distributed patterns of the rivers. Wave-dominated delta and tidal-dominated delta. Recently, the San Antonio Falls Laboratory using the new mixture, using the walnut, and they created nicely the wave-dominated delta and tidal-dominated delta. It's very exciting to see it develop a single one channels and wave ridges. And also some of the other ones using the wave actually created barrier islands. So I was very excited to see this result. And this one is created from some tide influence. And walnut sediments actually reduce the critical shear stress and moves around and make a beautiful tidal channels. And also, as you see, is a funnel-shaped river mouth. There are many researchers working on the river systems. You can see the alfalfa actually made a secret to create meander rivers from the fully braided rivers. And Christians in UC Berkeley actually done a beautiful job to create meanders and maintain the meanders using over the long time periods. Earthly and on Mars shows examples of meanders. We want to fully understand what's the physics behind that. This is one of my experiments over the glass, very flat, very smooth, but I put artificial spring water and create a carbonate precipitation. It also makes a self-channelization. And once after a couple days, it gradually increases sinuosity toward the right-hand side and left-hand side to the two different bends, and eventually it makes a bulgence. Let me speed up a little bit, and here we go. It makes a bulgence here. So we use different materials, different facilities to fully understand the meanders and river systems. Bed forms is another thing. I just got the video from the website. It's very nice. So unidirectional recirculating flume is not the only things we are using. We're using the multidirectional and multi-flow, combined flow to create different patterns of bed forms. It's been very advanced from the MIT group, and many other groups actually done a lot of beautiful work. Here, erosional landscape. This is a facility, beautiful ones in the University of Renault. And they created erosional landscape as they move the block up and created rains over it. And this is old experiments from Safel, Chris and Les actually created. They actually mimic the surface patterns quite well. And they understood of the erosional landscape quite a bit. And currently, just even a few weeks ago, I saw beautiful experiments from Taiwan National University. They connected erosional landscape, deltas, and deep marine systems. They create a beautiful topography from the catchment systems to delta progradation and the submarine landscape as well. There are more experiments. So carbonate is not excluded anymore. We include carbonates. This picture is over there. It's from Mammoth Hot Spring, Yellowstone. You can see the steps cascading to the downstream. So large pools on the middle, and then sideways you can see the smaller and smaller pools. They are evolving with time, and you can create those similar patterns in the laboratory. The size of this basin is maybe 30 centimeter wide and 50 centimeter long. It's a cooking pan. Okay. And they make small pools and steps very nicely. And this is the Tsunami experiment. So one of my PhD students actually worked on this. We had an outdoor flume to contain the large amount of the water, and the gate is open quickly enough to make a bore propagation and create a tsunami flow. And then we put sediments in front of the gates and make a fully suspended sediments transports and create a deposit along that long channel, and we can reconstruct what would be the paleo tsunami deposit. So there are many, many opportunities, many, many opportunities. I stole the slide from the Gary Parker. Many of you know him. And we have a lot of advance in science, advance in technology. Really soon, we will see everything. Tomography. Right now, we can see every section of the body as you go into the MRI. But probably it will adapt to the experiments, and probably we can see, without any hassles, all the stratigraphic patterns, like something like these sections. RFID is getting smaller and smaller. GPS tracking, probably we can put some sort of RFID into the grains, and probably we can tracking all particles very soon. Digital cameras, topographic scanners, is getting cheaper and getting better. one of my undergrad students working on make the Kinect as a topographic scanner. I purchased my big scanner from the San Antonio Falls laboratory for my step basin. It was $200,000. Kinect, $200. Digital cameras getting high resolution. You know, I can put digital cameras and see the grain size scales in my experiments. We use the different materials, alternative for the many different things. Alfalfa, we successfully implemented it into the Deltec systems. And walnuts is new material, can be used in different ways. Maybe make a wave-dominated delta, tidal dominated delta, and also mimic the meanders here. And this is a salt experiments. I put sediments on top, in the middle, and those are the polymer, actually lower viscosity, higher viscosity to mimic the salt deformation and see how the mini basin might evolve over time. So we will explore new materials and alternative for the fluid sediments and substrates, and we will approach it to the different landscape we have not explored yet. However, currently, experimentalists generate dark data, long tail data. And we like to work alone quite a bit. What is the dark data? If experimentalists actually create a lot of dark data impossible to access through the internet. Actually, many of my data from my PhD and my postdoc, and currently, they are sitting in my external hard drive. It's not connected to the internet. Is there any a central resources I can put it on? If it is easy. If someone can help me, that's the key. Long tail data. One of the kind experiments set up and isolated from other experiments happens a lot. So I'm doing this and someone else doing others. And we cannot compare systematically. And it is not limited to the data, but technology. When I visited Tetsuji Nagasaki University in Japan, I learned something very special. World cheapest accurate sediment feeder. So those are my students working on cutting the Coca-Cola bottle, Sprite bottle, to create a fancy sediment feeder, drill the holes in a different size, and connects two, and creates a chamber. So the head of the sediments is uniform all the time, and brings uniform sediments out. You can change the cap with a different size of the hole, and you can bring a higher discharge and lower discharge. Cheapest, and they love to make it. Collaboratory. Community experiments, something we need to develop. We learn from the high technology, we need to develop a new way of collaboration. And experimentalists done a lot of collaboration, but limited to only one experimental facility, one group. Okay, so can we actually make a multiple laboratory working together for the one grand challenge? During the last 2012 AGU town hall meeting, and some of you probably come, and workshop at the UT Austin, we collected the needs from the community. And there are the summary. We need a best practice in experimental methods in the storage and archiving and dissemination of the experimental data. And there are a lot of needs for a centralized place to store our data. And we need a standard and guidance. We need more frequent communication to foster the more collaborations. So we will planning on 3 different things. First one is knowledge base. We call it a SAN knowledge base. We want to reopen, refurbish, ramping the NSET data repository. It's existing, but it's only used for the NSET related people. We want to open it to the public and use it, make it more useful for many other users. We want to, doing that, we can synthesize research activities of experimentalists by continuously collecting existing and new data. And modelers, we need your inputs. Now this is the timing. You need to tell us what kind of data you need. Then we can actually put that into the plan, and when we educate the new students and young researchers, teach how to collect and store their data. That would be much faster way we can communicate with each other. This is one of our fusion table, the initiative. It already have 6 different laboratories participate in the initiatives. We want to broadcast what's going on exactly, and what kind of data you will get easily. Education and data standard. We want to provide a lot of workshops, special sessions, and using the NSET summer institution to bring more ideas and education to the community. Of course, we want to get like 100 numbers for a hotline to help the researchers. Modelers, please participate in the AGU special sessions and town hall meetings. We're going to convene continuously. Please participate workshops. In this year, in late August, we have planned for the Nagasaki University Japan workshop this year. And then next year, we're going to have another workshop more toward the data management in IPGP, and Francois Mitzbier is going to lead on that. And how about joint workshop between experimentalists and modelers in CSDMS, maybe in 2015. And collaboratory. We can actually broadcast easily right now with our technology to our experiments to the more larger group of people. And that would be promote the collaborations more, and the users can access to the data and knows about what's going on in the experimental community much better. There are some examples. We can make the multiple laboratory experiments. We can get a major grand challenge together as a community, and multiple laboratory can communicate with each other effectively and work on the same topic together. I think that would be fantastic. So filling up a huge matrix together, that would be the one. Solving a grand challenge together, that would be the one. It has not been done much in our community, but biology, actually they've done, and they are continuously doing that on their addressing the human DNA. So don't focus on my face here, it's ugly, but focus on the webcam here and the screen. We tested our webinar systems to broadcast experiments during the UT workshop. It was very successful. Actually, we had always online, like a handful of online participants actively involving into the events. They asked the questions. They actually, communicated with the groups. That was great. So we have a technology right now. How about this community experiments? It's a little different idea. So we gather the idea from the large community, and one of the laboratory actually conducts one experiment for them, and also to broadcast the experiments. There's an example from one we conducted in Rit-basin at UT Austin during the workshop. We done a survey before the workshop. So we gave them guidelines for options, what would be the tectonic, what would be the sea level, what would be the sediment supply conditions. They actually choose, and we designed the experiments based on their need. And then we conduct the experiments together with the on-site and virtual participants. This is the experiments after 8 hours of experiments. And then we already built some delta systems. Point source, the size of the basin is about 4 meter long and 2.5 meter wide. We surveyed, it was very exciting to see the communications I set whether they like sea level changes or sediment supply changes. Most of them actually like sediment supply cycles. We are more or less done with the sea level, I think. And I asked them whether you like full-length Bayesian type subsidence or back-tilting, full-length Bayesian type subsidence or passive margin subsidence, forward tilting or back-tilting. Many of the participants wants to have back-tilting experiments, so we put the back-tilting. And we made major cycles of sediment supply to create the shoreline progradation and retrogradation. Maybe we can see from the sea level cycles over the back-tilting experiments. After we done the experiments, we actually slice the deposit so we can see the stratigraphic patterns. Not very pretty, but we provide a high resolution data. So if you download the data, you can see all the clinoforms is moving and the shoreline trajectory actually going back and forth based on the response of sediment supply cycles. After we done the experiments, we instantaneously upload all the data and share the images and topography, slice deposit sections through the fusion table. And then provide web resources to discuss how to use the data in a community. So this is the snapshot of the fusion table. Right now, I think we have already 14 data sets uploaded and accesses through the fusion table. And we also provide a web forum for the community experiments, so we can communicate with each other what we can do with the experimental data. Probably we can write a paper with a group of people. They would help on different experts, different analysis together. I think that would accelerate our science much efficient way. Okay, so what to do? Join the club. Join the network. Please email sedimentexp@gmail.com. I see many of you open your computer. Do it right now, please. Okay, if you visit sites, google.com sites, Sediment Experimentalists, it's long, I'm sorry, but if you are familiar with the Google sites, you can if you put Sediment Experimentalist, you can access to the website, and you fully linked to all the data I just show you with a high resolution. It's a low-hanging tree. Please use it. CSDMS 2.0. I'm excited about it. I think we can advance our science together, much, much further. In the 2.0 CSDMS plan, there's a benchmarking data into the modeling framework. There are many similar models working in a similar way. How we can compare those. Natural data would be the one option, but resolution and the range of the data would be limited. But experimental data would be a good alternative. Maybe the data we can provide from the experimental community could make good uncertainty a measure for the models. Sediment Experimentalists and Modelers Network will provide a means to achieve the CSDMS goal together. Okay, thank you very much for your listening.
Since I have the podium up here, I'm going to jump in with the first, not question, but comment. One of the distinctive differences between the physics community and the earth science community is that as soon as a physicist does an experiment, a new one, all the other physicists go and do the same one. And that's an accepted culture in that community. When we run an experiment, we all run off and do something different because we want to be different. So this is, I think this is fantastic, a cultural shift and a very important one. Okay. I'll let Wonsuck take questions.
Yes, James.
Yes, thank you. And I think CSDMS, the community, is excited to work with experimentalists.
Great.
But we want to make sure you understand the frustration, the modeler's frustration with working with the experimentalist. For 5 years or more, I've asked for the data to be shared from NSED, and it never was. And that was a great disappointment.
Right.
And you know, openness is true openness. We've been pushing that in the software community. It's a slow nut to crack, but I believe we've cracked it. There's few people that are keeping their code to themselves, and they do it at their own risk. So I think that, you know, this is a new era that you're talking about, and I want to support you doing this. This is great, but do it. Make sure that it's wide open, it's public, the metadata is there. And then I think the second thing that the modelers and the experimentalists need to grapple with is that there really are two approaches to experimental flume work. Ones that don't really work at scaling, and those that do. And those that understand what their experiments mean if they're in a scaled environment, and those that are just after the response physics of a particular run. And so I'm wondering if you could address that now today, because there's huge intellectual misunderstandings between the two.
The first question, we need more communication. I'm totally understand your frustration as a modeler to use the experimental data.
Get it. That's the problem. We could not get it.
That's right. So we want to change it. We want to make a new website, new depository, like a data repository, so the modelers can easily access to it. But we want to get input from you guys to how to make a metadata, what is the format of the data, so we can communicate with each other better. But about this plan, we want to have the personnels to help to communicate two different groups together. So that's the key. We are not going to just upload our data, bunch of the data, to one website. We are not going to just let it sit there. We're going to actively promote to make collaborations. So we're going to approach to you. And I just like to ask for help. So when you have a frustration, just tell us, then we can start to solve the problem, right? The second questions, yes, most of the experiments are not perfect reduced scale models, but they are good analog models. Using a run with kinetics, basic physics, and sediment transport laws, they are totally the same, and we are using earthly material. And I always convince myself, even though I don't know how to solve this scaling problem, that's something we want to address as a community. That's why we want to call all experimentalists. This is not someone's the problem to solve. As a community, we need to solve it. I don't have an exact answer, but I always convince myself, if I don't understand my experiments, the sediment transport is the same, sediment is the same, how can I understand the nature? So if you can capture the experiments, your model, I think that would be the first step. Good first step, I think.
I think this is a wonderful development, which reminds me a little bit the movement that we have in open source GIS, where a couple months ago we launched ICA OSGeo research lab networks, and it has grown tremendously. We went from 6 labs to 20 labs in a couple months. So my question is that whether you are ready, like, for 100 experimental labs joining your network.
So we have targeted laboratories. They are like handful right now, about a dozen. So we're going to, because the experimental community is small enough to start a good start. So about a handful maybe dozen of the experimental facilities in United States, and maybe like a 50 to 100 experimental community participants, we can actually drive our community and make a good example. That's something we are aiming to.
Okay, all right, thank you, Wonsuck.